One day, not long ago, our school received an interesting collection of stories from the boys and girls of a South American country. The book was written and illustrated by these South American pupils who are in the same grade we are. They wanted to help show us, in the United States, what their South American school life was like. We all agreed that to thank them, we should write a collection of stories to send to them. The class elected 2 editors, and everyone helped write and illustrate the stories so we'd have a book that would tell our new friends about us and our activities. George had his idea ready to submit to the editors, Beth and Tom, who were selecting the best material for the book. George could draw and paint as well as anyone in the class, and he had worked hard on the first page of his picture story. But something seemed to be wrong. The story didn't make sense to Beth. Tom couldn't understand it either. The picture was fine, and the introduction was fairly clear. We have a puppet theater at our school, which has been a source of enjoyment to our whole class. We think it is a wonderful theater. This is just the first scene of one of the plays we have produced. Johnny and Mary met in the middle of the gloomy stage. Johnny sat down on a mossy stump in the enchanted forest. Mary said, "Johnny, what on earth are you thinking?" It just doesn't make sense. Maybe George's picture story won't be selected for the book. But Tom saw that the trouble was punctuation. Punctuation marks help us tell what we mean when we write. Johnny and Mary met each other. That much is certain. Then, in the middle of the gloomy stage, Johnny sat down. That doesn't sound right. Why would he sit on the ground? Tom realized they couldn't select that story to be written up for the book. George was really worried now. Uh-oh. Beth suggested that George should punctuate his story so it said what he meant to say. It was up to George.
What's wrong?
Everything. We can't tell what you mean.
There's no punctuation.
Well, you're the editors. You put the punctuation in.
Yeah, but we don't know where the marks belong. Look, here's what I mean. Now, this is just one way to punctuate it. Johnny and Mary met, period. In the middle of the gloomy stage, Johnny sat down, period.
No, that's all wrong. That's not what I mean. Johnny sat on a mossy stump.
All right, only you know what you want to say. We don't.
And another thing, what do you mean here? If we put a comma here, it will mean, Mary said, "Johnny, what on earth are you thinking?" But if we put the comma here, it will mean, Mary said, "Johnny, what on earth are you thinking?" You really need punctuation marks, or we won't know whether Johnny spoke to Mary or Mary spoke to Johnny.
Yes, I guess so. I'll try to tell you what I mean, and you help me put in the right punctuation marks.
All right, well, let's start at the beginning.
So they began to punctuate this first page of George's story. We have a puppet theater at our school, which has been a source of enjoyment to our whole class, period. Now, that period completes an idea and ends that sentence. So we need a capital letter to start the next sentence. We think it is a wonderful theater. Well, that certainly sounds flat and uninteresting. We need a punctuation mark to help us understand that you feel it is wonderful. There. That exclamation mark tells anyone, we think it is a wonderful theater. Again, we need a capital letter to start the next sentence. This is just the first scene of one of the plays we have produced. Often we can think of the words and sentences we use as creating pictures or images in the minds of our listeners. And we need punctuation marks to help us create exactly the picture we mean.
Johnny and Mary met in the middle
Wait a minute. Johnny and Mary are proper names. They must begin with capital letters.
I see. Johnny and Mary met in the middle of the gloomy stage.
Is that the end of the sentence?
Yes.
Then you need a period to show that these words belong together.
Then Johnny starts a new sentence, a new idea.
And it's a proper name besides. So we capitalize it for 2 reasons.
Johnny sat down on a mossy stump in the enchanted forest. I need a period after forest to show that all those words belong together in one idea. And Mary starts a new sentence, so that word must be capitalized, even if it were not a proper name. Now, Mary, said Johnny, what on earth are you thinking?
Oh, it's Johnny who speaks first, to Mary.
Sure, but I don't know how to do it.
It's really not hard if you think it out carefully. First, put quotation marks at the start of what Johnny says, and another set of marks at the end of what he says, to show clearly where he begins and where he stops speaking. Naturally, Johnny did not say, said Johnny, so we use commas and quotation marks to separate these words from what Johnny actually said. But Johnny asked a question, didn't he? So we need to show in the written story how Johnny's voice sounded asking that question. That does it. And there is George's punctuation problem solved. Now his meaning is clear to every careful reader.
We have a puppet theater at our school, which has been a source of enjoyment to our whole class. We think it is a wonderful theater. This is just the first scene of one of the plays we produced. Johnny and Mary met in the middle of the gloomy stage. Johnny sat down on a mossy stump in the enchanted forest. Mary said, Johnny, what on earth are you thinking?
So George went back to retype his story to include all the punctuation marks needed to tell the reader what he really meant. Meanwhile, Tom and Beth were getting some simple rules ready to help George and all the other pupils punctuate their stories, because they wanted the stories for the South American book to be easily read. When George had retyped his first page with all the punctuation marks needed to help tell what he meant, the editors were pleased and agreed to accept it if he would do the rest of it as well. To help George and the rest of us, here are some questions to ask yourself whenever you write a story or a letter. Did I capitalize the first word of each sentence? Remember in the story the sentence, we think it is a wonderful theater. Did I capitalize every proper name? For example, Mary and Johnny. Did I end each sentence with a period, question mark, or exclamation point? Did I use quotation marks and commas to show clearly who said what? And remember to read your story aloud. It sometimes helps you to know where to place the punctuation marks. And of course, you also can get help from your English textbook. Tom has an idea. If everyone who writes would think about 3 simple rules, the stories would be more easily understood by the boys and girls in South America. Here are Tom's rules. Punctuation marks tell which words belong together. Announce questions and exclamations. Show exactly what persons say. These rules of punctuation will help all of us communicate our ideas whenever we write. Mark your meaning so that your meaning is truly clear.